Hello?
Hey, what's up?
I need your help. Can you come over here?
I can't. I'm buying clothes.
Alright, well, hurry up and come over here.
I can't find them.
What do you mean you can't find them?
I can't find them. There's only soup.
What do you mean there's only soup?
It means there's only soup.
Well then get out of the soup aisle!
Alright, you don't have to shout at me. There's more soup.
What do you mean there's more soup?
There's just more soup.
Go into the next aisle.
There's still soup.
Where are you right now?
I'm at soup.
What do you mean you're at soup?
I mean, I'm at soup.
What store are you in?
I'm at the soup store.
Why are you buying clothes at the soup store?
Fuck you.
Okay, now that Laurel is back from soup, hello everyone, and welcome to the Weeb Years, a journey back to the Western anime boom of the 90s and 2000s. Real quick apology to the listeners, it is raining right now, and there's a little bit of thunder. Sorry if you can hear that in the background, not much I can do about that.
It's called ASMR! So, I guess it's pretty obvious what we're covering this week after that intro.
Quite possibly. I wonder how much those old memes have kinda stuck around, you know?
I'm at soup is still, I would say, pretty, prevalent in the internets.
I think, well, I'm at soup, absolutely. I don't know if people still know what it's from, though.
I feel like, so I used to run an anime club, and Code Geass was one of those shows that would consistently show up in people's top fives. I think it's still pretty highly considered, and I know when I was looking at my anime list, it's number 25 on popularity or something crazy like that.
Damn, really?
It's popularity number 22, ranked number 64.
I mean, that's still pretty impressive.
That means out of all the anime on my anime list that has been watched, it is number 22 in the most watched series, which is insanely high.
That is actually really rad, yeah. That makes me happy, honestly. The whole conceit of this podcast is that, pre-Crunchyroll era stuff is being forgotten because the anime industry is so focused on what's coming out now. And the idea that this thing from 2006 is still as popular as it is, yay.
Have you seen this before?
I had seen bits and parts of it. I caught a couple episodes every now and then when it was airing on Adult Swim. This is my first time watching the whole series. Yes. You know what? That's actually a good segue. Let's just go into the general information on it. Which, yeah, we didn't really do a big thing about it, but hey, we're watching Code Geass this week, or we did watch Code Geass this episode.
You're watching us watch Code Geass this week.
Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. It was released in October of 2006 by Sunrise, and created by Goro Taniguchi and Ichiro Okouchi. God damn it, man. Who together have credits on series such as Turn A Gundam, Mobile Fighter G Gundam, and The King of Braves Gao Gaigar.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that the people who worked on this had also worked on Gundam. Gundam is a bit of a blind spot for me, period.
Sunrise is the Gundam studio, Gundam is their thing.
Interesting, yeah, I don't think I'd heard of them otherwise. Because again, blind spot. I've always wanted to get into Gundam, but I just never knew where to start.
I am so fucking horny for the idea that I'm going to be able to show you Gundam thanks to this podcast.
Finally, someone who can show me Gundam in a way that won't confuse me.
Now, while Takahiro Kimura finalized the character designs for the show, the initial concepts were provided by Clamp, while the mech design was done by Akira Yatsuda.
I was wondering, because I kept thinking, there have to have been different people who did the mechs than who did the characters in those.
Oh, yeah. It is a common misconception that Code Geass is a Clamp property. It is not. They only provided the character design, not even the finished character designs. They provided the initial character designs, which Takahiro Kimura, he, kind of fixed to his own stylistic proclivities. I guess I'll say. By stylistic proclivities, I mean horny girls.
Well, What I assume that role would really be doing is Clamp, typically, they write manga. They're not writing stuff specifically for anime, and when their things are adapted into anime, the studio is adapting the character designs, right? They're just creating it strictly from an illustration perspective. And then they have these people who are going, okay, how do we make these characters in a way that we can consistently get them to look on model during the animation process with 10 different people or however many.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's just that, like, people think that because Clamp's name is on this that they created it, and they honestly had a very small part to play in the creation of it. But people see, normally when you see the Clamp name on something, it's like, oh, this is a Clamp project, but not in the case of this one.
So for me, I wasn't here for the Chobits episode, but I grew up reading Clamp. Mm-hmm. Clamp was, like, one of my core... I don't want to say mangaka because it's like a manga circle, but like I read a lot of Clamp, I read a lot of shoujo, and there's definitely things in this that feel like Clampisms. Like Lloyd feels like a Clamp character through and through.
Yes, and okay, there was a couple of points where I was watching the show where I was like, oh yeah, these are Clamp character designs, they're very Clampy, and then there's a couple of moments, like there's a scene near the end of the first episode where things get trippy as hell, and I'm like, oh, that's very Clamp, and there's a character that's introduced in like one of the very last episodes, which is like the clampiest character design possible. He looks like the little wizard kid from Magic Knight Rayearth. There's certain points of the show where the Clamp shines through a little more than others, for sure.
I think what probably happened is they put together, like, character resources for the writers to work off of. Because, like, it's weird things, too. It's, like, the nature of the relationships characters have with each other feels very Clamp homoeroticism in a lot of points. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that feels very Clamp, but I don't think they were involved beyond the planning step.
Yeah, no. Now, in April of 2008, it began airing on Adult Swim in the US with a dub produced by Bondi Entertainment, and in 2013, the license got picked up by Funimation, with the whole series now being available on Crunchyroll.
Yay! You can watch this legally.
Now, I did mention how I saw this on Adult Swim back in the day. Rather famously, the show was actually kind of given the shaft by Cartoon Network. It was given a really shitty time slot and almost no advertising. So the fact that it did as well as it did in the West is a testament to just how popular it was.
And this was something so I hadn't seen this before. And going in, I was like, okay, this has been overhyped to hell. This is probably going to be just a ton of tropes back to back. Because a lot of people I knew who liked this show generally tended toward more popular anime. Mm-hmm. Not to say that all popular anime is like lacking in plot or what have you.
Oh, no.
But when you're talking to someone and they only have like a surface level recommendations, you start to question like how deep have they delved into this, if that's the stuff that's heavily marketed here.
Yeah.
So I was always like a little bit hesitant to try this one because I thought it would be overhyped, and I was absolutely blown out of the water with this show. Holy fuck, this show was made for me.
It's like asking somebody what their favorite video game is and they say Call of Duty.
Yeah, but then you find out they're like the Call of Duty super fan, and it's like, oh, carry on.
And yeah, the series was an absolutely massive success, almost from the word go. Multiple Anime of the Year awards from various outlets, as well as having main characters Lelouch and C2 both winning multiple different, like, best male/female anime character awards at the time. I sent you a screenshot of, I think it was a New Type USA magazine ranking from, like, 2007 that had Lelouch as... Lelouch was the most popular... wait, no, it wasn't... It was the female characters, right? Yeah, top 10 female characters... Top 10 female characters, New Type USA Magazine, 2007. 1, 2, 3...
Ugh, I just said females.
Four of these...
I hate when people say that.
4 of these are fucking Code Geass characters. 4 out of 10 are Code Geass, and number 1 is C2.
The show has such compelling relationships between all the characters, because never at any point do Lelouch and C2 feel like either one is like a romantic accessory to the other. They're both very much their own characters doing their own things. They just hang out a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's way more compelling if there's a story like that where it doesn't feel like you're shoehorning all of the romance B-plots in. That's something I just really appreciated about this show period, I think.
Now, between 2017 and 2018, a 3-part compilation film series was released that, like, it largely retells the events of the original series, but enough details were changed that they're actually considered an alternate continuity, and there was even a later film titled Code Geass Lelouch of the Resurrection that expands on the new timeline. So they kind of compress and abridge down the original show into an easier to sit through, I guess, version, but they change enough of the story for quality's sake that it's like a whole new ending and it's a whole new sequel based off of that new version.
That's crazy. I was going to ask what the situation was with that, like, recent thing in the franchise, because I had thought it was like a sequel season. I didn't realize it was one of those fucking... What do you even call those movies?
Compilation film is what they're usually called.
Even if there's, like, new animation?
Yeah, because it's just kind of condensing down the original story. The original Gundam series from 1979 has those, and that's probably what we're going to be watching whenever we get to the original Gundam series.
That's fair.
There's also been a few spin-off anime, a manga adaptation, light novels, stage plays, audio dramas, etc. And of course, being a Sunrise title featuring mecha, you can bet your ass there's model kits.
Oh, fuck yes. Oh, that would be so sweet to have on display.
Now, to do a quick summary of the plot, I don't think we could do a better job than just the back-of-the-box synopsis from the DVDs. So I'm just gonna have you read that for us, Laurel.
Okay. On August 10th of the year 2010, the Holy Empire of Britannia began a campaign of conquest, its sights set on Japan. Operations were completed in 1 month thanks to Britannia's deployment of new mobile humanoid armor vehicles dubbed Nightmare Frames. That's spelled with a K, by the way. Japan's rights and identity were stripped away, the once proud nation now referred to as Area 11. Its citizens, 11s, are forced to scratch out a living while the Britannian aristocracy lives comfortably within their settlements. Pockets of resistance appear throughout Area 11, working towards independence for Japan. Lelouch, an exiled imperial prince of Britannia, posing as a student, finds himself in the heart of the ongoing conflict. Through a chance meeting with a mysterious girl named C2, Lelouch earns his Geass, the power of the king. Now endowed with absolute dominance over any person, Lelouch may finally realize his goal of bringing down Britannia from within.
So a few things to cover on there. The biggest one, I think, being the Geass, and specifically what the Geass does, because the Geass is, especially for the story that is in this, the Geass is such a cool fucking power.
It's just Geass from, like, Dungeons and Dragons, isn't it?
Wait, is that a thing? Hang the fuck on.
Geass with one S from Dungeons and Dragons. It's like a spell that allows you to command someone to do whatever you want.
Oh my fucking god, I didn't know about this. What the fuck?
Yeah, going into it I was like, oh, it's Geass like the spell, but with 2 S's and a capital G.
Yeah, Geass, 1S. You place a magical command on a creature that you can see within range, forcing it to carry out some service or refrain from some action or course of activity as you decide. What the fuck?
Fun fact, my D&D character in my last campaign took Geass, but specifically because she had an item that allowed her to modify one letter in any spell's name to cast it as a different spell. So instead of casting Geass, she would cast Geese. Anyway.
I didn't realize that this was an actual word. I thought this was just some anime bullshit, but no. Geass, noun. In Irish folklore, an obligation or prohibition magically imposed on a person. That's cool.
And it makes sense as a name among, like, all of the Arthurian shit. I mean, I guess it's more Celtic than English.
I think it still works, like, aesthetically, yeah.
There's a lot of, like, name theming the show. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, but yeah. So Geass, as it works in Code Geass, what he can do is that if he makes eye contact with someone, he can make them do absolutely any order that he tells tells them to do, straight up to, like, hey, kill yourself. Like, that's the very first thing he does, is he makes eye contact with this crowd of soldiers and is like, die. And they all just like, yes, sir, and shoot themselves in their head. It's a very impactful first scene, but the fun little, like, drawback to it, and I guess not drawback, but, like, caveat, is that he can only use it on each individual person once. So if he uses it on one person to be like, hey, go pick up that box for me, later on he can't look at the same person and be like, hey, stab that dude for me.
Yeah, that's a really good way of limiting the power to a way where, A, it's not so overpowered that it's not enjoyable to watch the conflict play out, and then B, it sets up for some later plot developments.
Also, it's just very fun in the, like, strategy way of things. Like, this is simultaneously a very common way to talk about this show, and a lot of people think that it's a very bad way to talk about the show. I'm on the camp where I think it does kind of work. Like, if you're just trying to, like, pitch it to somebody, I think it's fine to say it this way. Code Geass is very, like, Death Note meets Gundam, and the Death Note part shines through in the, like, strategic mind battle end of things.
Is that controversial to say? I feel like tonally it's very similar to Death Note.
I think it's very similar. I saw a lot of people being online being like, oh, that's too reductive, it's too simplistic, you shouldn't say that.
I think that, like, the way that I would have described this show is if Ellen Light had a baby and that baby was illustrated by Clan. And also robots. Which, yeah, real quick, the nightmare frames are fantastic mech design. I love the way that the cockpits are, like, in the back. Because that's the thing with a lot of mech design. Like, this is a thing in Gundam. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. But this is the thing in a lot of the mech design where when you try and actually think about, okay, someone needs to be inside the mech. The cockpit is usually going to be in the chest, but you have to have all the other electronics in the chest. So, like, how big does the thing have to be to fit a person in it? And then you end up always having mechas that are, like, fucking 50 feet tall. I like how with the nightmares, the cockpit is kind of like a separate part that's in the back of the robot. And so it allows them to be a lot more smaller and compact, which makes for much more interesting fight scenes and, like, scenarios to put them in, because they're, like, the size of, like, large construction equipment and not a Gundam. Yeah, and you know what else is I think it thematically really works? Because we consistently are seeing, like, power packs and people going in and out of the mechs to look almost like loading a gun, which highlights that these are military weapons and not, like, self-sentient robots. Because there's some variety in terms of mechs.
That is a really good thing to point out. I like that a lot, yeah.
I don't know if that was intentional.
I love the way, I guarantee it was. I also love the way that they, like, skate around instead of walking and running. It makes really good action scenes.
I like when they, like, shoot towards the camera, like how Lancelot does in the opening.
Oh, God, the Lancelot is such good design. I need a model kit of the Lancelot so badly.
It's so fucking sweet.
Oh, and speaking of those really good shots of the Lancelot, like, going towards the camera, real quick, love the opening. Colors by Flow is one of the most iconic OPs of the 2000s, and I will hear no arguments to that statement. The song slaps, and there's some really great shots in it, especially of Suzaku launching the Lancelot towards the camera as the music drops. It's really cool.
I like the first opening. I didn't like the second opening as much.
No, the second and third openings are bad, but the first opening is rad.
Yeah, the first opening is rad. And honestly, I like the visuals for the second opening. It's just like, I was wondering while I was watching it too, like, what happens if you're making an anime and you've got these two openings and one is worse than the other? Do you still put it out, or do you choose to just keep going with that first opening? Like, do you think that was a decision they had to make, or do you think that was something that was, like, in the contract?
I do wonder, like, I wonder if part of the reason they switch songs is because maybe they have a certain expiring license on the song, and that's why they can only use it for so many episodes.
Or they got funding from, like, a manager or Sony Music or Pony Canyon or what have you, and they're obligated to use that song because it's part of a contract. Like, I don't know enough about how the industry works to say, but I could totally see that being a thing.
Yeah, I have no idea either. Real quick, something I want to just touch on and get it over with. We mentioned in the synopsis how when the Japanese people were taken over by Britannia, they were renamed into 11s, Japan was renamed to Area 11, and the Japanese people are called 11s. Apparently, at some point, internet racists on 4chan and such started adopting the term 11s as an actual slur to use against Japanese people.
Oh, humanity.
Not a pleasant thing to mention, but I did feel like it was necessary.
Yeah, I'm gonna be on the lookout for that now.
I do wonder how prevalent that still is. I feel like that was probably more of a... Like, even with Code Geass still being popular today, I have to imagine that has probably gone out of style.
I don't know.
I just imagine some Redditor listening to the episode is like, yeah, we have much better slurs now. That one's just so outdated.
Opens trench coat. Look at all these slurs I got here for sale, kid.
So let's go ahead and jump into a couple of the main characters real quick and get them out of the way with, starting first, of course, Lelouch.
Lelouch, how early do we learn about his backstory? I'm trying to remember, but I started this so long ago.
It's teased a bit in the first couple episodes. I don't think it's till like episode 3 or 4 that you get like the whole story so much. But basically, he's one of the many children of the Emperor of Britannia. Did they call him a king or an emperor? I think it's emperor. Pretty sure it's emperor. Regardless, he's one of the emperor's many, many children. When Lelouch was a young kid, his mom got killed and his sister was put in a wheelchair and made blind, and ever since then they had to go into hiding by living with this other like noble family. I find it very weird that he changed his name but only his last name, but he's trying to be in hiding.
I assume that it just has to be a common given name in the setting. That's the assumption I made, because everyone in this show has fucking crazy like last name names.
Fucking Jeremiah Gottwald.
Or you have like Diethard and like
don't.
Darlton.
Every time they said that man's name, it made me cringe a little bit.
I just am trying to say it in the German way that it would be, because it's a German name. Diethard.
Yeah, the way it's spelled and not the way they say it in the show.
Yeah.
When they're constantly like, oh yeah, Diethard.
It's very unfortunate.
They really emphasized that last half.
I thought they just called him a slur. Straight up.
It was 2007. But yeah, and so Lelouch's main motivating force throughout the whole show is he wants to find out what exactly happened, why his mom got killed, why was his home attacked, because he knows that it has something to do with the rest of the royal family. Someone in the royal family was responsible. He doesn't know who, and so his plan is to just kill them one by one until he finds the one who's responsible, which eventually becomes much more of a possibility when he gets the power to manipulate people into doing his bidding.
The way I read it is he's trying to get to the Emperor and he will kill anyone who gets in his way. Or he is willing to kill anyone who gets in his way, I suppose.
Column A, column B.
Yeah.
He wants to find out what happened to his mom, but regardless of who actually, like, pulled the trigger, he does hold the Emperor responsible for it either way because he didn't do anything to help.
Yeah.
Lelouch is presented as a very, again, light Yagami style, like, chess master type character, quite literally in some places. And okay, sometimes the way that they write him is a bit overdramatic and silly, but most of the time it's either like actually very cool, like the mind games that he plays work out in a way where you're like, oh, that's rad, or it's so fucking stupid that it loops all the way around to being cool again. You're like, oh, that's so dumb. I love it.
Yeah, I don't know, because even when he's acting over the top, when you're trying to amass followers, you're just trying to be charismatic. And if people are endeared to him, that's a form of being charismatic and people sympathizing with you, you know? So even when shit was like that, I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense from like a leadership perspective. Like if you're looking at this like he's forming a cult.
You are not wrong. I'm not really even talking about his performances. I'm talking more about just how some of his plans end up working out and how contrived some of them have to be to actually exist and happen. But you are also correct. Yes, the drama, he is purposefully a drama queen and it works quite well, honestly.
It works really well, yeah. I think what you're describing though is still like a character trait and a flaw of his that just makes him feel more believable as a character. Everything in this show feels very intentional to me.
I'm thinking more from from just a writing standpoint, like there's some, I won't get into it because of spoilers, but there are some moments where if you think about what he would have had to do and how perfectly everything would have had to go for his plan to actually work right, you're like, you are a lucky son of a bitch that actually worked out the way that you wanted it to.
Yes, it's like a high risk, high reward sort of.
But also a lot of times they do a really good job of making you believe that, like, no, he planned for every possible outcome. He knows his enemy well enough that he can make a counter plan. I'm losing my words, but it's good. Even when it's not good, it's fun, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
He's probably, like, doesn't actually plan for a lot of shit to work out how it does. He's just really good at bullshitting. That's how I took it. That's the read I got. He's also good at planning, but also he knows how to... He's got, like, he's got the politician background.
Yeah, they literally introduce him hustling some old dude in a chess match. Our other main character is Suzaku Kurugi, whose name is really fun to say.
Yeah, it's got a really good mouthfeel. Kurugi.
Kurugi is fun. Suzaku is a childhood friend of Lelouch's who was born Japanese, but managed to get himself into the Britannian military. They specifically refer to him as a honorary Britannian, which is a very fucked concept with some very unpleasant real-world implications. But Suzaku's whole thing, in contrast to Lelouch being very, like, ends justify the means, morally gray, Suzaku is much more like, I am the good guy, I am going to do what's right. He is the lawful good character. His whole thing is about, like, he specifically joined the Britannian military with the aspiration of, like, I'm gonna change the system from the inside, which I'll have more to say about Suzaku later.
Oh, Suzaku.
He is also the one who gets to pilot the Lancelot, which is the first, like, special nightmare that you see in the show.
The Round Table.
Yeah, initially, all of the nightmares are just very, like, basic military grunt suits. The Lancelot is the first one where you're like, oh, this is a very custom job, and it's really cool. Like, it's got the double swords and skates around. Okay, another thing I forgot to mention about how much I love the Lancelot, not the Lancelots, about how much I love the nightmares and how good of mech design they are. It's so unique that so many of them have the main weapon of, like a weaponized grappling hook. It's rad.
I guess they do. A lot of them just have guns.
Oh yeah, they also have guns, but a lot of the fighting in the nightmares is, like, they launch these dual grappling hooks out of the chest portion of the nightmare to try and, like, strike at things or to, like, swing around through the buildings. It's the action scenes in the show are really kinetic and fun to watch.
Dude, how cool would a Code Geass themed claw machine with a fucking neck as the claw be?
I know there's at least a couple of Code Geass video games, but as far as I'm aware, the only ones I've seen are, like, visual novels. I would love, like, a hack and slash kind of video game where you can just pilot a nightmare and fuck around. I do want us to touch on Suzaku a lot more later, but is there any, like, basic things that you have to say about him here, or do you want to wait to touch on him later when we get back to him?
I wanted to touch on the fact that I can't think of many other properties where the antagonistic force that is driving a lot of the action is lawful good, or adjacent to very, like, clear-cut, heroic, lawful character.
That's another Death Note comparison. Like, okay, Death Note, Light Yagami is the villain. He is the protagonist, but he is the objective villain. Code Geass, Lelouch does a lot of fucked up shit. He's much closer to anti-hero levels of things than he is full villain, but it is another case where, like, just because it is the antagonist doesn't mean they are the villain.
Also, is Lelouch a villain, or is he an anti-villain?
No, I said Lelouch was an anti-hero.
He could be an anti-villain, though, if you're considering him to be an anti-villain to the Britannian royals.
I suppose so.
There's a few ways you could read it. I think in this case it makes most sense to look at it like protagonist and antagonist, but we could definitely play with hero theming through it as well.
I also want to make something very clear real quick, because I realized I just said that the antagonists of this show are not actually the villains. I'm just talking about Suzaku. The main antagonist force of this show is a horribly racist, fascist government partaking in genocide. They are the bad guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me make that very clear. I do think that the Britannians are the bad guys.
I think that trying to reduce this show to good and bad is over-reductive, because I think this is very much a show that shows that people have capacity for good and also capacity for evil, and different like, all of the characters undoubtedly do some fucked up shit at one point or another. And I love that.
Oh yeah, that is one of the strongest points of cold. Oh no, the Geass is cold. I need to put it in the oven.
Cracking open a cold Geass with the boys.
That is one of the strongest points of Code Geass as a whole, is how it touches on that gray morality type of thing, ends justifying the means, blah blah blah. The show is so well written. I love it.
And if you couldn't tell already, it's very political.
It's very political.
It's very psychological.
Okay.
It's like fantasy politics stuff. No.
Doing another comparison again, thinking about like Gundam and whatnot, there's a Gundam series called Mobile Suit Gundam Witch from Mercury. I love Witch from Mercury. It's really good. It has some flaws. And one of the flaws that it has, because this is a thing in like most major Gundam shows, is Gundam is very like, you've seen that popular meme of the bullet going over someone's head that says war is bad, and they're just looking and they're like, oh, cool robot. That is very Gundam. Gundam is always about, like, politics and the dangers of war and blah, blah, blah.
This is why I've always wanted to get into it, because I fucking love fictional politics.
The thing is, if I'm being objective, some Gundam series are better at the politics part than others. Witch from Mercury, as much as I love it, it got to a certain point in the show where anytime they would be talking about, like, the corporate espionage politics part of it, my eyes would just kind of glaze over, because they didn't really do a good job of making it engaging and making it easy to follow. There's a couple of points in Code Geass where I felt like I sort of lost track of what was happening. Not enough that it like took me out of the show. There's one or two points where it's like, that's a whole lot of names you just listed off. I'm not going to remember them, but it's okay. Yeah. So after we get that initial backstory thing about like the Britannian invasion of Japan and turning it into Area 11 and whatnot, in the first episode, we get introduced to Lelouch and some of his friends from the student council and such like that. And on his way home from school, at least I think it's on his way home from school, there's this Britannian military transport truck that gets attacked by some terrorists and derailed. Lelouch goes to investigate and like potentially help if anyone's injured or anything like that. And a couple of hijinks ensue, I guess we could say. Not really hijinks, more like horrible atrocities of man happen. And Lelouch is introduced to C2, who is our third main character of the show, arguably. She doesn't actually show up a whole lot, at least not until the second half. The first half, she's barely in it. But I would definitely call her a main character.
I think she's there. She's just at Lelouch's house.
I just mean she doesn't get as much screen time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even towards the end, you only kind of see her in scenes alone with Lelouch.
Yeah.
She doesn't really interact.
There is a narrative reason for that.
She doesn't really interact with many other characters throughout.
Yeah. But C2, which I hate the way her name is spelled. It's spelled CC, like just like initials CC. I was writing it in my notes as like letter C number 2 for like the first half of the show until I found out it was spelled a different way, and I was like, that's fucking stupid.
I just kept writing it like C-2 because if I just wrote CC, I would be fucking myself over.
But yeah, C2 is the one who gives Lelouch the Geass power, and who she is and what she can do is a whole big mystery of the plot, which even by the end of season 1 isn't fully answered. We're gonna have to wait till season 2 for the full thing. I won't get into my theories on what she is or what she was, partly because it's spoilers and partly because I don't want to be proven super wrong and look like an idiot by the time we cover season 2. She is really cool. I like her character.
They kind of give us a little bit at the end of season 1, but it's not much.
A little. It's just not fully answered yet. I'm sure it will be in the second season.
So the transport truck, we're under the impression that it's carrying poison gas, but really there's just a lady in it.
Yeah, because she was being subjected to some kind of weird Britannian experiments. She was being transported under the guise of like, oh, this is a truck transporting like hazardous materials, and these Japanese liberation terrorist group freedom fighters, they want to capture the truck so they can get it for themselves and be able to use it in, general terrorism activities.
I remember very specifically that they talk a lot about it being poison gas and that they think there's poison gas in there.
Yeah, it even comes back in like a later episode, a few episodes later. But yeah, no, it's not poison gas. It's horribly inhumane experiments. Right off the bat, from episode 1, I caught myself thinking that the dub was a bit of a mixed bag. It gets a lot better by the second half, but even by the end, it's kind of carried by the leads. Like, Johnny Young Bosch as Lelouch and Yuri Lowenthal as Suzaku, they both do great.
Yeah.
There's also Karen Strassman as Colin, who also plays Rouge the Bat. I didn't catch that when listening to her, but I thought that was neat. I wasn't really sure what to think of her performance at first, but by the end I did like her.
I really liked her performance, actually.
In the first half of the show, it kind of went back and forth. Like, there was some line reads that I really, really liked, and there was some that I thought were kind of rough, but she definitely gets it by the end. The expanded cast, though, is much more of a mixed bag. But at very least, the main cast that you're going to be listening to most of the time, they give great performances.
I mean, we do have a background Steve Bloom.
Okay, that's fair, yeah.
So, like, there's some good ones in the background, too. And I'm usually someone who's, like, a sub-purist.
So trash.
I'm trying to branch out.
Slowly, I will make you a better person.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I think I might just be biased for Callan because she's just such a cool character. So I think I may be giving her a little extra leeway. She feels inspired by Asuka from Evangelion and like informed by Asuka, but she's very much her own character. And there's just so much going on with her that's so interesting and she feels like a very empowered female character to me because while a lot of her motives do still stem from relationships she has with men in her life, she's very autonomous and she's not avenging. I'm not gonna jump into that because that's spoilers. Fuck. We'll get into it later.
Oh, you're gonna talk about the mom?
No, I was gonna talk about how, I guess I can say this like off the record. I think it's really interesting that like she is motivated to like carry on her brother's legacy and joined the gang because he perished and she wanted to do one last thing for him.
Oh, I don't think that would be spoilers. I think that's base character information.
Okay. Yeah, it's so charming though. Like they treat her with such respect. She is there because she wants to be and not because she feels pressured to. While there is like an aspect of her feeling an obligation to carry on his memory and his goals, it's clearly something that's also very personal with her. And that makes her really interesting to me, I think.
A little clarification when you say that she is respected. She is respected by the characters. She is not respected by the framing.
Yes.
She is very sexualized, and I don't like it. Even before I found out that she was only 17, I thought it was kind of dumb.
I thought it was weird. It didn't feel like narrative. It felt like an A1 Pictures original where they have like a moment of fan service and you're just like, okay.
Yeah, Colin's fan service is just fan service. Like, it is very blatant fan service. Like, you get full nipple in a couple of scenes.
It's bizarre. Like, early on, there's a scene where she's in the shower and a character hands her a phone and it's like, girl, why are you talking on the phone in the shower? Put clothes on and talk on the phone.
Also, why is there a phone next to the shower? No, I want to like Colin, and I don't think that she's a bad character, but there are issues with her that just kind of make it hard for me to like her. Like, again, she's very overly sexualized. Her nightmare, the Guren, she eventually gets her own. Love the design of the Guren itself. Love its fucking, like, I'ma melt you attack. Did you notice it is the only one with a horny cockpit? Her Guren is the only one where to pilot it, you have to straddle it like a sex horse.
Oh, I don't think I realized that was a form of trying to sexualize her. I think that went over my head completely.
Yeah, no, when she pilots her nightmare, she is leaning forward, straddling the seat with her butt in the air.
Yeah.
And it's the only one that's like that. It's very horny.
I guess for me, it was more evocative of, like, someone riding a motorcycle than a sex act.
A little bit, but it's definitely, it stands out because it's the only one.
Yeah.
It stands out that the sexualized fan service bait character is the only one that has to straddle something. I think I've said the word straddle too many times today.
I think there are some interesting ways you could read it too, as well, though. Like, it could be like, on the part of the people who made it, absolutely, it's fan service. But if you're looking into it and trying to find other readings, like, it's like when you're riding a bike competitively and you get really flat to the bike. Like, she's being aerodynamic and I'm going pro gamer mode.
That is a very generous interpretation of the framing that I don't think I agree with.
No, I'm saying it's absolutely meant as fan service, but I think you could do a bit of character reading into it if you look hard enough.
I suppose so. I was very put off by Colin because unfortunately she gets one of the worst episodes in the whole show, the one where she finds her mom in a drug den. She is presented as such a huge bitch in that episode, and the episode itself, like, the writing is so contrived, and the drug refrain that they bring up at the show, it is barely mentioned again in the rest of the show. It's just a bad episode that presents Colin badly, and it was bad.
Yeah.
It was fully skippable.
When I say I like her as a character, I'm mostly thinking, like, I love her in the beach episode.
Which is not the kind of beach episode you're thinking, listener.
I love when she interacts with Suzak. That's what I really love. I love that dynamic.
Yeah, that stuff is good. Yeah, let me be clear. I don't think Colin is a bad character. I think she is unfortunately tied to a lot of the worst aspects of the show.
That's 100% fair. I just really like her as a character in isolation if you remove all the weird fucking fan service.
She also, her outfit is just really dumb. She's got this, like, turtleneck sweater with a vest over it, but the vest, like, wraps around her boobs and makes them balloon out. It's really dumb.
She looks like the character from fucking Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. That's what I kept thinking.
Oh my god, you're right! The Rose Girl! Okay, now is what unfortunately I think is going to be one of the biggest conversation topics. This show, arguably, is better now than it was when it came out, and I hate it. When I was writing my notes, I was making predictions about this, and then when I was going through and looking at, like, reviews from the time, I was proven right, where when this was airing, there were criticisms about how the Britannians were unrealistic in how, like, evil and violent they were, and, like, the portrayals of how racist they were and just how willing they were to commit genocide, and there was complaints like, oh, this seems a little cartoonish. But now that we've seen the horrors of stuff like Ukraine and especially Gaza and, like, all the alt-right shit that's going on here in North America, it is both much more believable, the events of the show and how the characters act, and a billion times more upsetting. Like, the massacre in the first episode is a hard watch now.
Again, I think that would probably vary a lot on an individual basis, depending on where you grew up, what your history curriculum was like. It's definitely something we're all more aware of with social media, for sure.
Speaking with the context of the podcast, of, like, looking at it from how things were being perceived and being watched in the West in, like, the mid-2000s and whatnot, I think that's a fair statement to make.
Yes, in the context of, like, a Western approach, for sure.
Watching this show and having the unfortunate context in my brain of, like, all of the atrocities of, like, Gaza and what Israel has done, having seen those videos and people talking about it on social media, and just having that so intensely in your brain now in the modern day, and then watching how these things are portrayed in this show, it's like, oh, this is actually really impressive, like, how accurately you're portraying these monstrosities and just how horrible they can be. Like, good writing, really ahead of the times. I don't like how accurate this is. It makes me upset that our world is so like this. I wish this wasn't the case.
But I think, like, people who took a lot of history, or people who have sought out a lot of historic content, or people who have been in places that have been colonized by the English are going to be a lot more sensitive to these details. And I think there are a lot of people
definitely
like that in the Western world, you know? Like,
for sure.
For me, even just growing up, I was always taught, like, oh, the English took our country away, like Scotland. Because my dad would say that. My dad was Scottish. I'm Canadian. I was born here. But my dad was born in Scotland. And, like, my family would always be talking about, like, we need to make sure that we vote on the referendum so that we can finally be free from England again, because they've been oppressing us for hundreds of years. So, like, that kind of stuff to me, like, it felt very believable. And, like, I have some close friends who are from other places. Like, I know I have one friend who their background is Filipino, and I know they've expressed similar sentiments about, like, Western colonization has impacted the Philippines and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So, like, I think some people are definitely primed for it, and I think if you're someone who likes history and seeks that out, you're going to have some concept of that, because this kind of thing, while it's more easily accessible now, it's always been happening if you are able to seek it out, if you're in a place that doesn't have censorship against it, if you're in a place that has resources.
And also just the advent of social media now making it easier to find these things and know about this stuff. The point that I'm trying to make is just that I think that the way that they tackle these topics was really ahead of its time, and I just wish it wasn't, because of what that means for our world today and the kind of world that we're going through. This is in no way, like, this is pure praise for the show, pure condemnation for the realities of the world.
But again, I don't think that there's more bad now than there was before. This is maybe an optimistic perspective. It's just that information is so accessible now. 100% what you were saying, though.
And continuing on that topic, so much of this show has some masterful writing, especially when it comes to portraying, like, the racism of the Britannians towards the Japanese. Like, the first episode has a line, I love this line, I wrote it down in my notes when I was watching, I love this part. The first episode has this line where Prince Clovis is making a public speech, and at one point he says, "To all my imperial subjects, including, of course, the many cooperative 11s who choose to serve the Empire of Britannia." That is such a amazingly written line. That is such a great line to set, like, the tone of the scenario. That's such a great line to tell you what kind of character this doucher is. It's such a great, like, realistic way that something like that would happen. Like, yeah, if you've got some kind of, like, government or nation that is subjecting another country or, like, a smaller nation to their rule, that is absolutely how they would talk. And it's great. I wish it wasn't, but it's great. I love it. That was such a good line.
In the first episode, we also have that absolute motherfucker of a general who is horrid. I was just like, oh boy, we've got straight up colonial racism.
And he's another great example of what I mentioned before about, like, when this first came out, and, like, especially when it first started, like, coming to the States, there was a lot of criticisms like, oh, this is cartoonish levels of villainy. But we know now that, nope, some people are just like this.
I feel like even just, like, growing up learning about, like, shit that happened in World War II, though, like, how can people not see that humans have this capacity for evil and war crimes?
There's a difference between capacity for evil and how evil you actually are as a person. This gets into a whole conversation of, like, oh, they were just following orders, which I don't want to have, but it's a difference between, like, how much are you enjoying the horrible act that you're committing, I think is what people were talking about when they're saying, like, oh, this is cartoonish.
Sure, but something you'll notice is that in a lot of those scenes where there's really heinous shit happening, it's because it's all Britannians. There are not any Japanese citizens in that scene. Like, that scene with the general, he's just talking to Britannian soldiers. But versus, like, the scene with Clovis, where he is presenting thinly veiled colonialism, but it's less aggressive in the wording of it. It's interesting in showcasing different types of impacts that colonialism has, and how that can manifest.
There was one point near the middle of the show where I did get a little bit concerned, because it was the episode where this, like, because there's a bunch of different, like, Japanese resistance groups trying to get up against Britannian rule. And there's an episode where one of them, like, takes over this hotel or convention center, I think, and they take a bunch of Britannian civilians hostage. And I was a little worried in that episode that they were going to try and, like, both sides the whole thing. Like, no, you don't understand. The Japanese are assholes too, you know, everyone's bad and this sort of thing. Thankfully, it didn't come to that, and they still make sure to tell you that, like, even if some of the methods that the Japanese are using are a little underhanded or immoral to, like, get out of Britannian rule, the Britannians are still objectively the evil in
Another
this.
thing that really works to this show's credit is that they're just presenting these events and letting you decide how you feel about them. Like, there's some writing Britannians into antagonists, but it doesn't feel forced. It's not like a show where the protagonist has a rival and you don't quite understand where that relationship is coming from. Like, everything is very rounded, and all of the characters are very human in interesting ways. And, like, while the general gist of the show is colonialism bad, colonialism antagonism, like, there's so many times where we see, like, Lelouch doing absolutely heinous shit that there's no way to really come back from.
And a big part of that also comes from the fact of what Lelouch's true goals are, because, so, something we actually, I can't believe we didn't do this, but something that we actually forgot to mention is that Lelouch takes on this alternate persona of a revolutionary named Zero with, like, this cool, like, helmet and shit, and that's how he's leading this double life of, I'm a normal teenager, but also I lead a terrorist cell trying to fight against unjust rule. I can't believe we forgot to mention that until this point. Sorry. But a big part of what you're saying also feeds into what his true intentions are, because while as Zero and being the leader of what eventually becomes the Black Knights, he is presenting it as like, we will not let the strong bully the weak, and, you know, we're fighting against the Britannian rule. In reality, his true intentions are, while he's doing a good thing along the way, he's just using everybody in his path to get revenge on the Britannian royal family for the death of his mom and his sister getting crippled.
Yeah, but it's interesting because he's taking that anger and shaping it into something that is generally productive, but also when he gets too consumed by his obsession, or if he sees like something as a threat and he starts acting paranoid about it, like there's a couple situations where you'll see him falter, but for the most part he's like channeling that horrible desire to kill someone in a pretty productive way.
And also, to expand on what you were saying earlier, like, he objectively crosses the line multiple times, but it is purposefully left up to interpretation, like, what points are him crossing the line and what points are, like, justifiable in his actions. Like, the show never tells you, like, okay, this is the point where he's gone too far. There's a lot of points where you could argue he's gone too far, but it is really up to the viewer to decide which of those are where he crosses the line.
Where do you think you fall? I think I skew pretty far into Lelouch apologism.
Okay. That's another thing, is, like, again, viewing it through the modern lens as we are, and the realities of the world as they are today, I feel like Lelouch is a lot more sympathetic now than he was back then. I think the show is still very gray morality. I think the grays are a little less muddy than they used to be now that we have a better understanding of what the Japanese were going through in Code Geass.
And again, that's something that's going to really vary person to person.
Oh yeah,
but from our perspective.
One other small scene, we'll move on here in a second, but one other small scene that I really want to touch on that's just emphasizing my point of how much I love the writing of the show and the subtleties of it. There's a scene where Cecile, the woman who works with Suzaku and Lloyd, very kindly and with very good intentions offers Suzaku, who is Japanese by nationality, to be nice. She offers him some onigiri, she offers him some rice balls, but she is Britannian. She is performing cultural appropriation, and the rice balls she filled with fucking grape jelly.
Oh, I did it!
It's such a small moment, but it's like, yes, that is such a wonderfully written and realistic interpretation of, like, being racist but not maliciously.
And I mean, that's a broader discussion as to whether or not you think, like, where you draw the lines for cultural appropriation, for sure. Because I know there's whole conversations about, is food cultural appropriation, or, like, stuff like that.
I really liked that scene. It was a very small, very understated scene, but it struck me very nicely.
I deadass thought it was a bit for the dub. I thought they were making a Jelly Donuts joke.
Oh, like the Pokemon dub?
Yeah. Because I was like...
Oh, now I'm curious, actually. Because
I was like, wait, jelly? Because I think, like, I don't think there's any jelly you would actually put in onigiri. I'm here thinking, like, can you make jelly out of beans? Can you do, like, a red bean jelly?
Well, the closest things are red bean paste and then pickled plums, which I can see the leaps that someone who is not of the culture would take to be like, oh, grape jelly is a okay substitute for that.
It just seems so... I can't take it seriously. I can't believe someone would seriously do that. Why the fuck would you put jelly in rice?
Okay, but then you also have, like, even today, you have videos on YouTube of white women making ramen from scratch, and they're like, oh, here's my favorite ramen recipe that I learned from my sensei down at the rec center, and she uses fucking, like, spaghetti noodles or some shit. Another good continuation of this topic. I do not like Suzaku. This is another thing where at the time I can see him landing a lot better, but today, like the context of the modern age, the horrors that we have seen both abroad and in North America, even with just like Black Lives Matter and police brutality and all that stuff that has become much more like in the public conscious. Suzaku and his whole like, oh, I gotta follow the rules, I gotta do this the right way. Freedom has to come the right way is an actual line that he says, and I cannot endear myself to him.
Dude,
because he's such a narc.
He is, but also the whole time I was watching, I was like, oh man, I can't wait till his earth shatters before his eyes. Oh.
Which I don't think really has happened yet. Maybe in season 2 it will.
I think a couple times. He made some concessions.
Somewhat, but he's still, from beginning to end, at least of season 1, he's got the, like, he even says it multiple times, where his goal is, I'm going to change the system from the inside.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we know that doesn't work.
I think...
And because of that, it's really hard for me to enjoy Suzaku's character.
I think saying it doesn't work is reductive. I think saying it doesn't work on an international conflict scale or a national scale is fair. Like, someone someone working at a company and being like, I'm going to change processes from the inside, I think it's feasible. I think that in this context and on this scale, it absolutely is not happening.
No, yeah, I'm not talking about like a business or something. I'm talking about like those people who are like, oh, there's good cops who are trying to change things for the better from the inside. Like, no, we know that's not how that works, and that's not how this would work. I think Suzaku's character was much more effective before, fucking 2019 or whatever.
I don't know. Like, Suzaku, I think, is still nuanced enough to be interesting, and he has a lot of potential for character growth.
I don't think he's a bad character, and I don't think someone is wrong for liking him. I just personally...
He just rubs you the wrong way.
It was very hard for me to... Yeah, it was really... Because unfortunately, I know people like this, living in the Midwestern United States. I know people who are like this, where it's like, yeah, the government may be doing bad things, but you still gotta follow the law. Like, shut the fuck up. All of the best Suzaku scenes are the ones where he doesn't talk and he's just piloting the Lancelot really cool.
Oh, I really like when he's presented with difficult questions and you get to just watch him, like, his life flash before his eyes.
Yeah, I don't like those moments because he always uses the wrong bullshit answer where he's just a little bootlicker narc.
I think it's also really interesting. I find him really interesting because he's really willfully ignorant, which is really interesting for a character of this type. Like, from an outside perspective, when you see this type of, like, lawful good character, you typically assume that they're, like, someone who has not faced adversity. Suzaku is someone who has faced adversity and chose the easy way out, rather than actually dealing with his shit going on. And that is fascinating to me.
Yeah, because that's another thing that you gotta be reminded of, is that, like, Suzaku is Japanese.
Yeah.
I think it would be so much easier to understand his character motivations and the way he thinks if he was, I hate that I'm gonna say this, but if he was the good white, like he's like, oh, our government is bad and they're oppressing people and we need to do better. Gotta follow the rules, but I want us to do better. That'd be different. But the fact that he is actively a member of the oppressed class and is still, like, has this mindset, like,
it's
look,
tragic.
I'm white. I'm born male. I am very masculine presenting. I'm not gonna pretend that I have it very hard, but I am queer, so I do know at least a little bit about, like, I'm queer in Midwestern Missouri. I have been, like, jumped and attacked in public before for being gay. I know at least a little bit about what oppression is like. I'm not claiming I'm, like, the king of oppression or something.
Sure, what you're saying is...
what the fuck does that mean?
You are a part of a marginalized community, so you can extrapolate and infer how it feels to be oppressed. Even though it's not a one-to-one.
And just seeing this guy who is of an oppressed community, who is of an oppressed minority, and like a major one at that, and seeing him take the path that he takes and, like, having the mindset that he does, it feels gross.
He's, like, doing some hardcore, like, gaslighting himself to, like, feel certain ways and believe things happened in certain ways. He's just... that's how I see him. I see him as very much being in denial and, like, creating these very specific scenarios and retellings of how events went so that he can keep himself functioning, you know?
Yeah.
It feels very much like a coping mechanism and a very unhealthy coping mechanism.
I really hope that he gets better in season 2.
I find him... I don't think I would change anything about him, personally. I really like Suzaku. I don't like him as a person. I just think he is perfect as like a foil to Lelouch. I love that Lelouch is a Britannian fighting for Japan, and Suzaku is a former Japanese citizen fighting for Britannia. It's such an interesting parallel, and it comes up so much, and I feel like the show consistently subverts your expectations.
Mm-hmm. Now, Suzaku, I ended up disliking him a lot more than I thought. A character I ended up liking way more than I thought I would, and related to Suzaku, I actually really liked Princess Euphemia.
Me too, except my wife kept saying that she's literally me every time she appeared. And it makes me feel, like, conceited to say, oh, I like her, when the whole time someone was like, yeah, that's you, bitch.
I really liked her. She really grew on me, and she gets, like, a couple of the most emotional and impactful scenes of the whole show.
Jesus Christ,
like,
Euphemia.
Oh boy. Oh, there's like her scenes and the way that the show like puts on the drama and tries to make you emotional. Holy shit, it works. Euphemia is a very effective Euphemia is a better Suzaku.
No, I disagree. She's too similar to Lelouch to be a solid foil for Lelouch.
What I mean is in the way of like Euphemia and Suzaku both have ideas of like they are on the... I was going to say they're both of the oppressors, but they're not because Suzaku is Japanese, but they are both like on the side of the oppressors, but trying to make the oppressors less oppressy. Oppressy. Oh, put it in my oppressy.
Oppressy. Don't put that one in. Oh, don't put that one in.
I'm gonna.
Fuck.
But like they both have similar motivations and worldviews, but I think Euphemia is just a better done version of that character. I think one of the reasons why is that Jesus Christ.
Oh, is that thunder?
Yeah, it's been doing it a lot, but that one was really bad. But I think one of the reasons why, and like I'm literally just now thinking about it as we're speaking, is that she is actually a member of the oppressors. The reason why Suzaku pisses me off is that he's doing all this and has this worldview while being part of the oppressed class, and it feels so unrealistic to me that someone who is being put down that way would have that thought process. But it makes sense coming from someone who was indoctrinated with that worldview from birth and is eventually coming to realize like, oh no, things need to change. I think Euphemia's journey of that mindset is much more well done than Suzaku's.
I think a lot of Suzaku's motivations are tied to his backstory and not wanting to be punished. Even though he also wants to be punished.
There is a thing that we learn about him later on which does impact his character somewhat. I don't think it really solves my issues with him though.
I think it makes it a more complex situation, and I think that it explains that he has some ulterior motives in siding with Britannians, and he's got personal shit going on with why he joined the army. Like, I don't think it excuses how he is, but I think it makes it even more easy to read him as someone who has tons of fucking trauma that they have not processed.
I can concede to that, yeah. Okay, I'm tired of complaining. I've complained too much. The thing that sucks about this show is that so much of it is really, really good. Like, please believe me when I say that despite all of the complaining I've done over the last however long, I really liked this show.
Yeah.
But all of the best parts are really spoiler heavy, so it's hard to talk about the good shit without spoilers.
Can I talk about a character I really liked to, like, contrast with your Suzaku, since we're kind of getting into other characters now?
I was about to do the same thing. Please tell me what character you like.
I expected to hate Shirley. I fucking loved Shirley.
I like Shirley. I don't like what they did with her.
I think it's so interesting. I think it's her character arc is like something I have never seen in anything else before.
Are we talking about, okay, I'm not going to say who this person is, but are we talking about before she meets Mao, or are you including the Mao stuff?
I'm including everything from the start to finish of season 1. I just think that the way that she's set up to make you think that she's like the female lead and a love interest and etc. Like, she's very leaning heavily into like childhood friend tropes in the same way that Suzaku is, but not as childhood. Like, she's like the girl next door kind of childhood friend, kind of. Yeah. And she's really heavily leaning into that, and she just, her whole story takes such a different direction that it absolutely shook me.
It did go some very interesting places that I was praising for a while. Damn it, I wanted to say nice things. Okay.
Do you want to talk about Nina?
No, I want to continue this thought. Episodes 14 to 17 are just bad. They introduce Mao, who I hate, and some stuff happens.
Oh, I love Mao.
You liked Mao? No, God, I fucking hated Mao. He's a terrible character. The stuff that happens to Shirley is so dumb and terrible writing that makes no sense. You could honestly write out all of those episodes, completely write out Mao, completely write out what happened with Shirley, and you would have a better story. And I'm pretty sure that's actually what those compilation movies did. I think I saw something where they completely take out the whole thing about like what happens with Shirley's memory and whatnot.
Don't take away my cyber twink.
He's so gross and he's so over the top and he feels so out of place.
Yes, but he's so campy and he's so tragic. And
I hated Mao. He was the worst part of the show to me.
He's so clampy also.
The design is very clampy. His design is fun, I will say that. And like when he was first introduced and kind of teased, I thought he was neat, but when we actually like learn who he is and he's on screen for extended time, it's like, God, please leave.
I just had a good time whenever he was on screen because he's just absolutely wild and he is chaotic stupid. I had a great time with Mao.
I had a terrible time every time he was on screen. I hated him.
I think the other piece is that a lot of Code Geass is very much like characters rigorously planning for how humans will behave, and then you throw a fucking like loose cannon in there who does not behave how anyone expects, and seeing the characters respond to that is really interesting to me.
He does make for a very interesting foil to Lelouch, which I will agree to, and it does lead to a very good Lelouch scene in the climax.
I wish Mao was written better. I agree with you.
It's so unfortunately obvious that you could have cut out that whole subplot entirely and lost nothing.
Well, you would lose some of the exposition surrounding C2 and the nature of Geass itself.
Yeah, but they could have put that in a different way. It wasn't necessary. Mao being there was not necessary for that.
No, but I think he's presented as what Lelouch could become, and I think that is really... It shows some of the more severe consequences of what can happen to a person, and the type of person Lelouch does not want to become and now knows he does not want to become.
Specifically the consequences of what can happen from using Geass powers.
Yes, that's what I'm referring to, but I'm just trying to be a little vague.
Okay, minor spoilers for the next couple of minutes. Skip ahead a tiny bit if you don't want, but like very, very small spoilers. And it's spoilers for a part of the show that I think is really stupid, so it really doesn't even matter. But this is the one time where we'll dip into spoilers a little bit because I want to talk about this. So eventually, Shirley finds out that Lelouch is Zero and goes to confront him, and there's some shenanigans that happens where she gets kidnapped by Mao and blah 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 blah. And to solve the problem, Lelouch, our mastermind genius who is able to come up with incredible strategies at the very last minute and is great at getting out of trouble, Lelouch, his bright idea in that moment is to wipe her memory completely. We don't actually see it happen, but he uses the Geass powers on her and is like, his command is like, forget me. But the thing is, he wipes himself from her mind entirely. She does not know who he is at all anymore. Motherfucker, you could have just said, forget I'm Zero, and the problem would have been solved. But it's so bad. It's so badly written.
I also interpreted that as he doesn't want her to get hurt if he gets apprehended. And the less she knows about him, the safer she is. I saw it as...
That would still...
I don't know. It is weird.
That would still just be solved by her not knowing he's Zero.
But she would still have a crush on him and be seeking him out, and he wanted her to just not be involved and not be interested in him. Because she did have an interest in Lelouch for Lelouch.
It just felt so drama pandery. Like, the only reason it's there is to make some melodrama happen. I mean... And it's the most blatant of that.
It's also Lelouch when he is feeling probably the guiltiest we've seen him at that point in the show because of the consequences of his actions. Like, I think it's a moment of weakness for him, and I think it's also... I don't think that him making her forget he's Zero would be as long-term of a solution. Like, I think there's enough moving pieces that I can suspend my disbelief and believe that he fucked up in this situation because he was so overcome with hurting her so much. And he thinks that putting her distant from Lelouch and his emotions are getting in the way. And, like, it's not him acting as Zero, it's him acting as Lelouch.
I'll concede to that a little bit. I just left those episodes feeling angry.
That's fair. I think it could have been done better. I think it could have been done more interesting. But there is also the piece of he really doesn't know how Mao is going to act. And putting her in a situation where she doesn't know who he is and he's going after him, like, there's enough going on that I can suspend my disbelief enough to believe that... I can suspend my disbelief enough to believe that this is believable.
I like that line. I'm giving that in.
Fuck.
Here it is, pizza fanatics, the new Ultimate Cheese Pizza. Our classic crust pizza loaded with 6 different cheeses, special cheese herb seasoning, and your favorite toppings. All for an incredible price. 2 mediums for $15.99. The Ultimate Cheese Pizza from Pizza Hut. Another one of the best tasting pizzas under one roof.
Alright, so it is a week later. We had to cut the recording short because it was storming so loud on my end that we could not keep recording. We had to take a break, unfortunately, and the earliest we could reschedule to keep recording was a week from now, so sorry about that. Anyway, how you doing, Laurel?
Sorry, one sec. I started choking.
That's not a good sign.
Oh, okay. Catch me up on what we were talking about last.
We ended the last recording on a bit of a negative note, so I want to start this one off on a much more positive one. Lloyd, favorite character. I love him so much. I love my sassy science twink.
Yes. I don't think I referred to him as a twink at any point. I mostly referred to Mao as the cyber twink.
To be fair, like, every single male character in the show is a twink, but Lloyd is my favorite one.
Yeah, because Clamp did the designs. Like, you're not making any sort of statement by saying that.
I'm not. But he's also, like, I'm pretty sure they straight up confirm that he's gay, or at the very least asexual, because there is a scene, like, near the end of season 1 where someone comments, like, oh, he has no interest in the opposite sex, and he's just like, that's right. He also sounds like fucking James from Pokemon, if he was way more chill.
Who's he voiced by? Do you know?
Give me 1 second. Nation. Oh, that's Liam O'Brien.
What else does he do?
He's in Critical Role, and he's also Gaara from Naruto.
Gaara's the sand guy, right?
Yes, Gaara is the sand guy.
Okay.
So, who is your favorite character?
Who is my favorite character? That's a great question. I might actually like Lelouch the best.
That's an acceptable answer, I think.
He just keeps pivoting and... Oh, wait, no. My favorite character is Mao. I forgot about Mao.
That trash. Sorry, that was mean. Problematic fave.
He's my problematic fave, you're right. Oh, one thing I really like about this show is the level of dramatic irony that's going on and the way that it's, like, applied to the characters, because the audience knows so much more than the characters do.
Oh yeah, my favorite, like, example of that is the first time Lelouch fails when he goes up against, Purple Bitch.
Cornelia?
Cornelia, yeah.
my wife.
I forgot. Yes, Cornelia. The first time he goes up against Cornelia and she completely outsmarts him. And the whole time it's building up to it, I feel like as the audience, you're kind of trying to decide like, oh, Cornelia is like super confident. And usually when the bad guy is super confident, it means they're going to fail. But Lelouch is also really confident and he's had enough successes. It's about time for him to have failure. Because so it's like, oh, either way that it goes, it's going to be a surprise. And yeah, she completely outsmarts him and he gets royally fucked and it's really good.
There's some absolutely beautiful mirroring throughout with Lelouch and the Royals having very eerily similar thought patterns because they are so close to one another. They have the same experiences. They have similar upbringings. I see that a lot with Yuffie. Like, I think Yuffie is like a really close mirror of Lelouch when we are introduced to her and as we see her play out events throughout this first season.
Honestly, Yuffie, I think, is a better foil for Lelouch than Suzaku is, and I'm not just saying that because I didn't like Suzaku very much.
I don't know that I would call her a foil because she feels too similar and not enough of an opposing force. Like, her and Lelouch to me feel like two sides of the same blade, whereas Suzaku and Lelouch feel like two completely different weapons.
Well, that kind of goes into what I'm talking about, though. Like, I don't know. I feel like Lelouch and Euphemia work better against each other because unlike Suzaku, who has all of these goals and ambitions, he doesn't really have the means to achieve them necessarily. Like, that was the big complaint I had about him, is that his whole idea of how he was going to make change was kind of asinine.
Yeah.
But Yuffie actually does have the ability to make change, and you do see her make change, and so it's like both she and Lelouch want the same thing. It's the methods of how they're going about those things where, I don't know, it's fun to see, like, maybe this is Yuffie is who Lelouch could have been in a different world. And
Precisely.
The writing in the show is really good. Okay, big tone shift. Let's talk about the Pizza Hut thing.
What's the Pizza Hut thing? Remind me. Jog my memory.
Were you watching on Crunchyroll?
I was.
You didn't see the Pizza Hut thing. You didn't see that Pizza Hut's logo is in every episode.
Oh!
All those times where C2 was ordering pizza, she was ordering Pizza Hut.
Oh, that makes so much sense. I actually remember, they had like a weird card, like a little business card that came with the pizza in one of the episodes, and I actually wrote down what it said because it was so bizarre. And I was like, there's something up with this. Lo and behold.
I've sent Laurel a picture of various Pizza Hut related Code Geass screenshots.
Huh?
Yeah, okay. Oh, this is great. So, Pizza Hut Japan has actually been known to sponsor a number of anime. There was Pizza Hut branding in Darker Than Black, and apparently also in Evangelion. And they only actually paid for a little bit of product placement in Code Geass, but the creators thought it was so funny that they put it fucking everywhere just as a bit.
Oh, that's fucking genius.
But the thing is, Pizza Hut Japan was the one who specifically made the brand deal with Sunrise. So when the show got localized, Pizza Hut US and UK, they didn't approve it. So all the Pizza Hut logos were edited out of the home media releases and edited out of, like, Crunchyroll and streaming versions.
That sucks.
So, like, I wish there was more we could talk about without giving away any spoilers, but for as many stumbles as the show had along the way, the last few episodes are fantastic. They're exciting, they're dramatic. There's even, like, a couple of scenes that made me like Suzaku.
Oh, okay, I want to hear more about which scenes made you like Suzaku.
Like, okay, as spoiler-free as possible, I feel like this is kind of a given without being considered a spoiler, but, like, the quote-unquote final showdown between Suzaku and Lelouch, I thought was actually done really well. Like,
yeah.
I overall do not enjoy Suzaku. I think that his way of thinking and his worldview is, to put it nicely, asinine, considering. But when his moments are good, they are very, very good. There's also a moment in the Mao episodes, actually, where he gets a really cool, like, hero moment, and I thought that was really cool. And also any time he's in the Lancelot fighting. But that's more the Lancelot being cool than Suzaku being cool.
Yeah, I don't think he gets gets points for the Lancelot being cool. Lloyd gets points for the Lancelot being cool.
I will say, in, like, the earliest episodes, when he first gets to Lancelot, the first time you're introduced to Suzaku as a character, he, as a soldier, just, like, on foot, does this super over-the-top triple spin kick maneuver that looks really silly. And then the first time you're introduced to the Lancelot, he does it in the Lancelot against Zero in his own back. And it's just, I don't know why I like that part so much. It was just very fun.
No, that is really interesting, because that could be hinting at his identity, which Lelouch maybe could have picked up on and didn't.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
The show, it has a lot of stumbles and a lot of points where I think it could have been a lot better. But overall, it's really well written and the characters are really compelling. And I'm so fucking upset that it ended on such a cock tease of a cliffhanger, because I'm so desperate to see what happens next.
I know. Yeah. I feel the same.
I don't remember if we mentioned it in the first half of the recording last week, but I was not aware that season 1 was not self-contained.
Yeah.
I thought it was one of those things where season 1 is its own thing, and then season 2 is more of a sequel than it is a continuation. We are absolutely watching season 2 at some point later on. I don't know when, but we're definitely coming back to it.
We'll say there is a big reveal at the very end, and it is crazy to leave on a reveal like that.
There's like 6 big reveals. There's so much that happens.
Yeah.
The last like 3 episodes of season 1, I don't think I clicked next episode so fucking fast before.
There was a couple episodes where I just had to stop and like go to bed and wake up and watch it the next day, because it was like, I don't know how to process what just happened. I was not expecting this show to pull this many punches.
If there is one word that you can use to describe Code Geass in both the good and the bad, it is engaging. This is a very engaging show.
The fact that it's this good absolutely blows my fucking mind. It's such an interesting choice to have these characters not be from the people that they're working with. Mm-hmm. I also was consistently expecting Suzaku to be broken throughout the season, and I don't think we quite got to the point I thought we were going to get to.
He goes through some significant trauma at a couple of points, but it never permanently breaks him.
I was fully expecting him to fully turn and just start killing people left and right, and I don't think we got there yet. Maybe we'll get there in the next season.
I don't really see that happening. If it did, I honestly think it would be a little too much of a break from character.
I think, too, that the show also pivots in such a way that Lelouch starts becoming more evil earlier on than I expected as well. Like, they add some things into the mix. I had a lot that I was speculating on, but...
This is an interesting thing for me, because, like, the show has such a heavy focus on, like, gray morality, and there are a lot of different interpretations of all the characters, but especially Lelouch and Suzaku and their actions and such. But from what I could see, a lot of the people talking about the show today are kind of just repeating the same takes that have been made since the show originally came out. And I wonder how differently the characters' actions and morals would have been perceived if it came out today with like our current political climate, kind of also harkening back to what I mentioned last week. I feel like this show needs a new wave of fans, and it needs a new wave of interpretations, because I think it could be very interesting. Hey, please go watch Code Geass.
Yeah, I think you were right on the money about Suzaku not aging tremendously well as a character, because he starts reading as, like, too ignorant in a way that isn't fun anymore.
This might be a bit of a stretch, but Suzaku is the cop trying to attend Pride. Oh, so here's something fucking wild, actually. Grain of salt, because I couldn't find any actual sources for this information, but it was something I saw repeated on a couple of, like, informational sites and such. Apparently, a lot of the writers of this show, who do you think they consider is the most, quote, morally correct character in the show?
I feel like they would be more willing to side with Lelouch.
fucking Cornelia.
What?
Again, couldn't find official sources. It's just very repeated things, so it may not be true. But apparently, a lot of the writers of the show think that Cornelia is the most morally just character.
I don't know enough about Cornelia to say. I mean, I think maybe it'll come up in the second season.
It's very weird. And the fact that I couldn't find any official source for it does make me wary of the realism of it.
Yeah, even in that case, why wouldn't you say Suzaku? Why would you say Cornelia? Like, what about Cornelia?
It's so weird.
I don't think there's much value in that for the first season at the very least. I don't know whose character I would ideologically side with the most. I think this is one of those situations where everyone involved is taking too many shortcuts for me to ethically, support anyone in totality. I guess Yuffie, but that's an easy answer.
I feel like I would probably side with Lelouch. He definitely goes too far on a number of occasions, but if we're weighing the sins from the virtues, I do think that he's the one who has the most right outcome in mind, and the one who is most likely to achieve it, I guess I could say.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm saying that right. Don't get me wrong, Lelouch does some fucked up shit on multiple occasions.
You think that he's more justified in the situation?
He's the most anti-fash while also being the most competent.
Yeah. I definitely resonated more with Yuffie just because I'm someone who's very uncomfortable with conflict.
Mm-hmm.
But I also 100% understand where you're coming from there.
There's another point of praise that I can give to Code Geass. Normally I find plot lines and moral conundrums that are do the ends really justify the means? That's such a fucking kindergartner's idea of a moral dilemma.
I mean, I never mind it because it's always interesting to watch it play out and see how it's written. I could watch this type of story forever.
I'm complaining about shows that are should I really kill the Joker or won't that make me just as bad? No, kill the fucking Joker, you jackass.
See, that's the trolley problem I was talking about.
Yeah, but that's one of the versions where the trolley problem is dumb and is for kindergartners. Just kill the goddamn Joker. Code Geass, it does focus on that sort of moral conflict, but I think in a much more nuanced and adult way than something like that.
For sure, and I think if you're gonna do that, you really need to lean into the concept of mercy and when is mercy deserved, which I think is where a lot of stuff falls flat, is that it goes surface level and it doesn't explore other concepts that could also be being explored at the time. If you just say, am I as bad as the Joker if I kill the Joker, and leave it there, that's still surface level. You're not exploring, the different possibilities and the different outcomes and whether or not his actions when you spare him will make you culpable, you know?
A lesser show would ask the question, should I kill the Joker? Code Geass asked the question, should I blow up this bus full of orphans in order to get to the Joker to kill him?
Yeah. Now, would you say that Code Geass does ethics and philosophy better than Death Note does? Do you have a preference between the two based on the first season?
I don't think that I have seen Death Note recently enough that I could give a good answer to that.
Okay.
But I am very excited to revisit that question whenever we eventually cover Death Note.
Yeah, that sounds fair. I definitely think this makes more sense to me than Death Note because it's about all of the characters and it's not so focused on one character's perspective or two characters' perspective.
I will say this is not in any way saying one is better than the other, but I do think it is a pretty objective statement that Code Geass is much more, like I said, morally gray, whereas Death Note Light is much more definitively the villain of the show. He is the protagonist villain.
I think in the anime, yeah. They do a lot of imagery that really cements him as the villain. I don't think that was as present in the manga.
I feel like the anime and the manga were pretty similar, but again, it's been a very long time since I experienced either of them in full.
But I think that Code Geass has set itself up better to be a long-running show than Death Note, just because of the way that Death Note plays out and the way that it starts to lose its structural integrity as it goes on.
Yeah, the second half of Death Note is kind of boring.
I actually enjoy it, but I know that I'm in the minority, and also I enjoy it for specific characters that don't show up until then.
Mm-hmm.
Another comparison I wanted to make is, I feel like a lot of anime uses chess symbolism, but I think this show does it in the most interesting way.
I do really like how, initially, when the show first started, I thought it was very corny the way they were showing Lelouch as like, oh, he's really good at playing chess against rich people, therefore he makes a good military general.
Because you know what? Fucking No Game No Life does that and just leaves it there. But this show actually delves into the metaphor and explores the metaphor.
They actually do make it kind of believable. And like, I like how whenever it took me a minute to realize it, but when you first see him, like, he's on the radio commanding the Black Knights and telling them where to go and what to do, you realize like, oh, he's actually referring to them by like the names of chess pieces.
Oh, that's probably why C2's name is C2, because that would be like a position on the board.
He doesn't name her C2, but thematically that could be what that is. And actually continuing on from that point, I really enjoyed how for the majority of the show, up until like the last quarter chunk or so, Lelouch doesn't have a cool nightmare of his own. Like when you first get, when the Black Knights first get their own cool nightmare, they get the Guren, a different show would have been like, oh, we gotta give the cool mech to our main protagonist. But no, they give it to Colin because Lelouch is the chess master. He is the one controlling the pieces. And it makes sense for him to give his pieces the... You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, thematically, it makes sense that he is giving all of this power to his pawns.
He's delegating.
And not himself. Yeah, I really like that bit. Later on, he does get his own cool mech, and it is very cool, and I think the fact that they waited so long makes it feel earned, and even, I think you could argue that, like, when he gets himself his own cool, badass mech suit, that's kind of a turning point for the character, where he's kind of grown beyond just being the chess master, and now maybe he's on to full-on, like, I don't know, he's definitely crossed some sort of character line at that point.
I think there's also something to be said there as well for the fact that Lelouch is able to delegate like a proper leader should versus Cornelia, who is fighting on the front lines, but still very much remaining in control of everything.
Yeah, like Cornelia is an incredibly competent soldier, and it does make sense for her to be on the front lines because of how talented she is in A Nightmare, but also, I don't know, she's also a really good foil to Lelouch in that sort of way, where they are both leaders of an army where they kind of treat their soldiers as pawns. Not necessarily in like the I'm gonna sacrifice you no matter what kind of way, but just in the I am going to control you like pieces on a board. Whereas she is going front and center, while Lelouch is like, I'm gonna stick back and let the ones that I know do well do their job.
And I think to extend the chess metaphor, Cornelia is the queen and Lelouch is the king, because Cornelia is able to get on the front lines immediately and take control of the board, but she's putting herself in a lot of risk doing that.
God damn it. You know, at face value, that sounds like such a bullshit thing to say. Like, oh, the girl is the queen and the boy is the king. But no, you are exactly right. That is exactly how their characters play. Fuck. Alright, we've waited long enough. I cannot hold it in anymore. My last big anger point, my last big criticism for the show, and then we're done. There's nothing bad left to say. Suzaku is not my least favorite character. My least favorite character is Nunnally.
Yeah, I'm really...
Nunnally sucks.
Yeah.
She is not an actual character. She is a plot device.
Yeah.
I don't like her voice in the dub. Her voice is unpleasant to listen to. There's a vague siscon thing between her and Lelouch, which I am very uncomfortable about.
Is that what that was implying? I thought it was just kids being stupid. What?
I don't know. I feel like I'm not in the wrong reading a siscon thing. It's really uncomfortable. Even if it's not actually there, it gets close enough to that line that I'm like, no, please stop. And also, there's multiple points in the show where Nunnally being in danger is the main tension point of the episode, and I just cannot be brought to give a shit. Nunnally is the worst part of the show. She is not a character, and they do a terrible job making you give a crap.
She's so cute, though. Like, she's adorable.
Her design is cute.
Some of the stuff she says is really cute, too. Like, her interacting with Yuffie when they're alone is so charming, which I think we see in, like, 2 scenes in this season.
I will concede to that. It was just hard for me to enjoy it because of the terrible voice acting.
Yeah, her voice acting is weird. She sounds like she's like an absolute mean person holding herself back the whole time. That's That's what it sounds like to me.
She sounds like a 60-year-old woman trying to sound like a toddler.
That too.
Which is unfortunate because she's supposed to be, like, in middle school, so that doesn't even make sense.
Nunnally's just kind of especially weird as an outlier. Like, her character isn't great, but she feels more acceptable to me as a damsel than a lot of other characters because we see very strong female characters side by side with her. And also because, like, she is a younger character, she is a disabled character, there would be some level of dependency on her brother for that. Like, I think they've set her up in a way that's interesting, but I want to see them do more with her, and I'm really hoping we see more of that in the second season.
That's my problem. I want to see them do anything with her, because she's not a character. She does nothing of her own volition. She has no growth throughout the show whatsoever. She only exists to motivate Lelouch and to look moe for the camera.
There's some scenes where we get some exposition through her. Like, we get some exposition through her talking to Lelouch alone, or we get some exposition of her talking to Yuffie alone. Not to say that's not a plot device, but I do think that that's an excuse in her favor for me.
I feel like you could have written Nunnally out of the show entirely and just had Lelouch's motivation be revenge for his mom, and you really wouldn't have lost anything.
Well, but again, a lot of it is like, a lot of her roles could be filled by something that isn't a character per se.
Yeah.
Like, a device in that sense. There's a whole part where Zero's like working on contingency plans for if something happens to him. And I don't think you could have that without Nunnally.
I feel like the very small points where Nunnally can actually be important, those roles could have been split apart by other characters who are actually characters. It didn't have to be Nunnally.
But there's also a bit of Lelouch has a side of him that he only shows to Nunnally. And that would also be hard to do without a character there to have a conversation with.
I suppose. I just wish she was an actual character. Also,
she's like 9. She's allowed to not have a personality.
I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like 9-year-olds can be characters.
They can be.
Also, I think it's very unfortunately noteworthy that the only disabled character is the one who is the least of a character.
Yeah, that is valid and worth talking about as well.
Really, the fact that she's used entirely as a plot device is making the fact that she's disabled feel a little gross.
Is what's-her-name not also disabled? The friend and the student council?
No?
Don't we see the one girl have a seizure at one point?
No. Oh, are you talking about Nina, the green-haired girl who's really racist? No, she doesn't have a seizure. She has like crazy over-the-top anime freak out because of her waifu.
Oh, I thought that was a seizure.
No, she was just having a crazy over-the-top anime scene.
An emotional seizure.
Oh. Okay, time for retro views. Or, more specifically in this case, retro view, because there was only one that I really wanted to touch on.
Okay, who's it by? Is it by that motherfucker Mike?
It's not Mike Toole. Actually, we have seen this guy before on the segment. This is from Anime News Network's Carl Kimlinger.
Which review did we read by this person?
I believe he was actually in the Chobits one, which you weren't a part of, but I'm pretty sure that's where I've read him before.
Okay, I did listen to Chobits episode.
I'm excited that we already have a recurring character on the podcast.
Yay!
So this is from Carl Kimlinger of Anime News Network. It is from 2008, and this is specifically reviewing the first 2 DVDs. From the first episode, when Taniguchi takes his tale of political strife and drives it straight into the kind of hammy, blood-soaked territory that would have been handled by Vincent Price were it a micro-budget live-action film series from the 70s, it's obvious that a masterpiece is out of the question. Lelouch is a bastard, full of hubris. Superior characterization is supplanted by a slew of characters as thin as their whipcord designs. Tense mecha battles alternate with stretches of goony humor, I'm not sure what that meant back then, but I don't think it means the same thing now, that blend into the series' tales of terrorism and compromised morality like hippies at a skinhead convention. And occasionally, the series wanders off onto single-episode tangents that might as well have a character-building sign stapled to their foreheads. Hardly the stuff of masterpieces, but no one ever said that a series has to be a masterpiece to be good. Code Geass is fast-paced, shamefully enjoyable, and not nearly as stupid as it first appears.
Oh, come on!
C2, Colin, and Princess Euphemia comprise the core of a female cast in which strength, in quotes, refers as much to iron wills and ambition as to butt-kicking skills and hair-trigger tempers, and Taniguchi is smart enough to recognize, and capitalize on, the Achilles heel of all real-life schemers. People don't always act the way you predict. This is definitely one of the more negative reviews that I could find. I feel like this is one of those cases where I definitely understand the viewpoints, even if I don't necessarily agree with them.
I think it's wrong, because I think that this show does pacing in a really well way. That's not right. I think this show does pacing very well, because you always see the, character building episodes to cleanse your palate and reset your calibration for the next big plot twist. I don't know if you noticed this, but I actually, was watching episode per episode and being like, okay, this one is a lighthearted episode. This is setting up character exposition for the next big twist.
Oh, yeah, of course. My thing about those little side episodes, like the one where they chase the cat around the school because it stole Zero's helmet, or, planning the school festival, all that, I completely understand why people wouldn't like those episodes, and that is one of the biggest points of the show where someone was like, oh, this part is bad. I wouldn't be hard-pressed to disagree with them, but I personally really like them because I think they make a great juxtaposition for Lelouch's other half. You could totally just focus on the fun, terrorism and the battles and the political intrigue and whatnot, but then if you just did all that, I guarantee you there would be criticisms of people going oh, it's weird that he's doing all this when he's a high schooler and we're not seeing him trying to juggle classes along with his terrorism work. But we do get to see that here. We get to see what the other half of his life is like, and I actually think it's very interesting seeing him act like a normal fucking high schooler for a whole episode, and then you have that in the back of your brain while he's committing war crimes.
Yeah.
And I think it makes a much more interesting character.
That, for sure. And I think what's interesting, too, is you see the two lives bleed into each other. And that is consistent throughout as well, because you see that his decisions he makes while doing terrorism impact his friends and their lives. Yeah. But you also see him trying to... there's one scene in one of the episodes where Shirley is flirting with him, and he's trying to figure out what she's trying to get from him, it's a negotiation tactic, and just not understanding. And I love that.
I really like the school life episodes. I think they're fun. But again, I can see why other people would think they're a waste of time.
I really don't think they're a waste of time, because I think they last exactly as long as they need to. And as you start going through the show, those episodes get more and more broken up by the terrorism and the plot shit that's happening. And you start to see episodes where they start out like that, and then the episode is completely hijacked by some figure.
Those episodes also do a much better job of making you care, at least a little bit, about the other members of the student council and his classmates. Just a much better job of that than making you care about Nunnally.
Yeah, Nunnally is... I don't know. I'm really hoping we get to see them do more with her, because she feels like an outlier in this cast of incredibly well thought out and well-rounded characters.
I think it's appropriate that her name has Nun in it, because that is what a character she is. She is a nun character.
I know you mean nun like None, but I'm thinking of her as the nun from the Nun movies.
One last little bit of trivia that I want to touch on. Again, this is another thing where I saw it repeated a lot, but I couldn't necessarily find a really good source for it, so, grain of salt. Code Geass was banned in China. This is true. Officially, it was for all the nudity, but a lot of other sources will say there's other reasons. Of those reasons, portraying Tibet as an independent nation, villainizing the Chinese government, and portraying a conquered nation rising up against their oppressors.
Yeah, the last one would be what I would believe the most.
I can believe all of those, and that the nudity was just the on the books official reason.
Yeah, I don't think it was the nudity, because if it was the nudity, they could have just cut the nudity scenes.
Yeah, but again, as believable as it sounds, I could not find real ass sources, and I don't want to be perpetuating things if they're not true, so big grain of salt.
It gets especially especially murky when you're looking at stuff that was likely said in another language, and you're looking at, like, fan translators reporting on, like, articles they read. Like, it gets so messy. I know I've seen that with, like, J-pop stuff, too.
Now, once again, can't really bother asking, like, oh, would you recommend this to someone today? Because obviously, we both thought that it was really good, despite some flaws. Please go watch Code Geass. However, I have a different question to ask you.
Okay.
As I was researching the show, I saw Code Geass pop up on a surprising number of those lists that are like, here are the anime to recommend for first-time non-anime fans, you know, where everyone's like, oh, if you've never seen anime before, watch Fullmetal Alchemist, watch Death Note, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised how often I saw Code Geass pop up on that. Would you give Code Geass to someone as their first anime?
Again, this is assuming that we're not tailoring our choices to the individual people asking.
I guess you could a little bit, but it's just a generalized question.
Like, I feel like a lot of those lists are targeted at young teenagers, and I don't know how interesting this would be to someone without the historical context. Like, if you just want to watch a bunch of cool fights and shit, and, like, you're young and are growing up in a Western country, and you're not super into, like, I don't know, RTS games and history and whatnot, I don't know that this would hold your attention. And I don't know that it would have a good influence on the person you are when you're 14. I wouldn't recommend this to 14-year-olds.
That's very funny, considering I think that's who Code Geass was most popular with at the time.
It was. Like, willy-nilly recommending, like, Death Note and Code Geass to kids is, like, I feel like it's irresponsible as an adult to recommend those things to a child. Just because they don't really usually have the media literacy to be able to critically think and look at stuff. I mean, neither do adults, but... would I recommend this to specifically a Western anime fan? I think this is very interesting because it's so influenced on the history of Britain and British colonialism that I think it translates very well to a lot of Western people and people outside of Japan who are in nations that have had impacts from colonialism, be it literal, direct colonization or just reverberations of incidents and whatnot and ripples. So I think that makes it really interesting, but also it is kind of juvenile at times. I think it really depends on the person. I think this is also a good show for, like, presenting to people to get them used to anime bullshit. If that makes sense. It's like a good level of anime bullshit to expect from anime.
Okay, that's a good segue. Would I recommend this, like, just in general? Like, do I think this is a cool show to watch and I'm just recommending it to someone who wants a cool new anime? Absolutely. It's flawed, but the positives greatly outweigh the negatives. Do I think this falls into the category of, like, here is a thing to show to a brand new anime fan as, like, their first anime? Absolutely fucking not. Like, the problem with so many of those lists and what people will say is like, oh, this is a great anime for first timers, is they're not actually thinking about the experience of watching this as your first anime. They're just like, oh, this one's cool and I like it and I want to show it to you. That's a bad way to get people into anime. You know how absolutely stupid it is how often I see Sword Art Online on those lists of good first anime? That is a terrible first anime. Fullmetal Alchemist? Absolutely fantastic. Death Note? Sure, good. This has way too much anime bullshit in it. And I'm not even just talking about, like, the 17-year-old titties, although that is definitely a part of it. There's just a particular level of anime crazy that you need to be eased into, and it can't be your first experience. There's certainly worse ones for sure, like Sword Art Online is a terrible first anime. Don't show people Sword Art Online, period. Sword Art Online is garbage. But this is certainly not one of the worst ones you could have as your first one, but I don't think that you should be giving this to people right off the bat.
And I think, like, for stuff like Death Note, people recommend Death Note because it's something that's more reliant on the dialogue, and the dub is really good, so, like, I see why people recommend Death Note. I don't know why you'd fucking recommend Geass.
Death Note, I think, is the best one that you could get, like, a live-action shot-for-shot remake put onto HBO Max, and it wouldn't feel too out of place.
Yeah, this, I don't know.
Code Geass is not a good first anime. Code Geass is a good third anime.
Yeah, what would you recommend as, like, the, like, 5 anime you would recommend to people?
I feel like that's an entire separate episode that we could do.
That is an entire separate episode, but off the top of your head before we do research. Like, what is your hair trigger first anime you'd recommend?
I don't feel like I have a lot of interest. Okay, yes, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. I know it's a boring answer, but it's also the correct answer. Death Note, sure. Maybe A Place Further Than the Universe?
Interesting.
I think that is a really good one.
Interesting. I like that you're going slice of life more so than shonen. Because my mind always thinks, like, oh, when people go seeking out anime, it's because they're seeking out, like, shonen tropes and shonenisms. Because that's what's most popular over here, even though it's very targeted at young, masculine demographics.
You know, a lot of people would say any number of Ghibli movies, and a lot of them would be correct, but I'm going to do a different anime film and say Tokyo Godfathers.
Oh, yeah, any Satoshi Kon would be pretty good. And I think they were received.
I don't know about...
Okay, that's fair.
I don't know about any Satoshi Kon, but definitely Tokyo Godfathers.
Yeah.
I think that's a good one.
I said that, and then I heard you going, and I was like, oh.
Oh, you know what, actually? Number 5, fucking Frieren.
Frieren is the one that's not the other one.
I know what you're saying, but that's a wild sentence.
It's not
Frieren
the trigger
is the
one.
other one. Frieren is not Delicious in Dungeon.
For what it's worth, I did rate this anime 10 out of 10. Just because I feel like it's so good that I'm willing to look past a lot of the issues. Because it's really ambitious as a narrative.
I don't usually go for, like, number rating things. The way I consume media, I don't feel like that really gels with me. But if I was going to do that, I don't think I would give it a 10 out of 10.
That's fair. Its ambition really sells it for me, and the way that it does storytelling is really engaging to me.
It's just very well written. Again, I said it earlier, but I think engaging is the best word to describe this show. So yeah, that was Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. If you stuck with us this far and you liked what you heard, then hey, we're on social media. We're on Blue Sky at Weeb. We have an email if you want to get a hold of us with questions, suggestions, feedback, anything like that. It is theweebeers@gmail.com.
Or if we make a mistake.
I feel like that falls into feedback.
I guess that is feedback.
Thank you for listening, everyone.
We will see you 2 weeks from now.
Bye-bye.
Bye!